The rancher had planned his life like a straight fence line across open land. Work hard, marry a quiet woman, build a family, grow old watching sunsets over his fields. But life has a way of laughing at our plans. Because the woman who rode into his world wasn't simple, wasn't quiet, and wasn't willing to be tamed. And yet, she would teach him the deepest lesson of his life, that kindness isn't weakness and love doesn't come from control, but from understanding. Before we begin, if you enjoy heartfelt stories about love, life, and the power of kindness, make sure to subscribe to our channel Soul Tales. Tap the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to life. Caleb Morgan owned one of the oldest ranches in Montana. The land had been passed down through generations of men who believed in firm handshakes, early mornings, and keeping emotions locked away like tools in a shed. Caleb was no different. He woke before sunrise, worked until his body ached, and spoke only when words were necessary. At 36, he decided it was time to marry, not for romance but for practicality. He wanted a wife who could keep the house, raise children, and fit neatly into the life he had already built. Someone calm, someone grateful, someone who wouldn't challenge him. So when a distant cousin suggested a woman named Eliza Harper, Caleb agreed without much thought. She was described as different, but he assumed that just meant strong-willed in a harmless way. Eliza arrived on horseback, not in a carriage or wagon like Caleb expected. Dust clung to her boots. Her hair was loose, wild, and shining in the sun. She slid off the horse with ease and extended her hand, meeting his eyes without hesitation. "Nice to finally meet you, Caleb," she said, her voice steady and warm. Something about her unsettled him, not because she was rude, but because she was confident. She looked around the ranch not as a guest, but as someone. Curious, observant, and unafraid. The first week was awkward. Eliza didn't wait to be told what to do. She helped with the animals, asked questions about the land, and laughed loudly at dinner. She spoke her mind, even when Caleb disagreed. He found himself irritated more often than he cared to admit. "You don't have to do all that," he snapped one evening when she came in covered in dirt after helping a ranch hand fix a fence. She wiped her hands on her pants and smiled. "I wanted to help. Kindness isn't about obligation, Caleb, it's about choice." Her words stuck with him, though he didn't respond. Caleb believed kindness was shown through providing. A roof, food, security. He didn't understand her version of kindness, the kind that listened, noticed, and cared deeply. One night, a sudden storm hit the ranch. Rain poured down and thunder shook the ground. A young ranch hand slipped in the mud and injured his leg badly. Without hesitation, Eliza ran into the storm, helping carry the man inside, calming him, holding his hand while Caleb tended to the injury. Later, as they sat by the fire, Caleb watched her quietly. She looked exhausted, soaked, and yet peaceful. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. She looked at him, surprised by his tone. "Yes, I did. When someone's hurting, you show up." That night, Caleb realized something uncomfortable. He had spent years protecting himself from feelings. Eliza ran straight toward them. Over time, small moments began to change him. She listened when he talked about his late mother. She noticed when he skipped meals. She left coffee waiting for him at dawn without saying a word. She never demanded affection, never pushed, never judged. Her kindness wasn't loud. It was consistent. But Caleb struggled. He wanted order. She lived with freedom. He expected obedience. She believed in partnership. One afternoon they argued badly. He accused her of trying to change his way of life. She stood her ground, her eyes shining with hurt, but also resolve. "I'm not here to tame you, Caleb," she said quietly. "And I won't be tamed either. Love isn't about shrinking yourself to fit someone else's expectations." For the first time in his life, Caleb had no answer. That night he walked the land alone. He thought about the fences he'd built, not just on the ranch, but around his heart. He thought about how Eliza treated people, how she gave kindness freely without fear of losing herself, and he realized something painful and true. He had expected a simple bride, but what he needed was a partner who would show him how to be human again. The next morning, Caleb did something he had never done before. He apologized. "I was wrong," he said, his voice rough. "I don't want to control you. I want to understand you." Eliza studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "That's all I ever wanted." From that day on, things changed. Not perfectly, not overnight, but honestly. Caleb began listening more than speaking. He started noticing the people around him. He learned that kindness didn't weaken his authority, it strengthened his relationships. When they married, it wasn't a quiet, proper ceremony. It was joyful, messy, full of laughter. The ranch hands cheered. Music played late into the night. Years later, people would say the ranch felt different, warmer, kinder, more alive. And Caleb knew the reason. It was the untamed woman who had stolen his heart, not by force, not by demand, but by kindness. Because in the end, kindness doesn't just change others, it changes us. So if there's one thing to take from this story, it's this: be kind, even when it feels unfamiliar. Be open, even when it feels risky. You never know whose heart, maybe even your own, you might transform along the way.